Chair, we are live and
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July 8th, 2026 Police Accountability Board meeting.
Progress.
To access the meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device using the URL in the public event packet. If you don't wish for your name to appear on the screen, you drop down menu and click on your name to rename yourself to be anonymous. Use it to request to speak, use the raise hand icon, join by phone, dial the number in the packet, and enter the meeting ID in the packet. And if you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press *9 and wait to be recognized. I'm going to acknowledge our land acknowledgement on page 3 of the agenda packet. And go to agenda item 1.
thank you, Chair. I'll now proceed with the roll call. Please be advised that Board Member Nash and Board Member Willis have leave of absences for today. So our quorum will be out of 5 members. With that said, Chair Cayetano.
Here.
Present. Vice Chair Wilson informed us that she is walking over. Board Member Allen.
Here.
Board Member Buswell-Charcot.
Here.
Board Member The Temple. Okay, we have a quorum. On behalf of ODPA staff, we have Interim Director Lee, our data analyst Saeed Mehdi, our investigator Daniel Weinberg, and myself, Policy Analyst Murillo. And I see Chief Lewis joining us remotely. Welcome, Chief. With that, and I don't believe I'm missing anybody else. With that said, Chair, we do have a quorum.
With that, let's go to agenda item 2, which will see approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any amendments to the agenda? No amendments. Okay with that. Can someone?
I move.
Josh moves. I second.
Okay, seeing or hearing no objections, the agenda is approved.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll go to agenda item 3, which is public comment.
Okay, at this time, speakers are generally allotted up to 3 minutes, but may be allotted less time. If there are many speakers, they may comment on any matter within the board's jurisdiction at this time, except confidential personnel matters. We currently don't have any members of the public physically present. Anybody attending remotely, if you would like to provide public comment, please use the raise hand icon now. Again, if you would like to provide public comment, please use the raise hand icon now. Chair, at this time, there are no hands raised.
Okay. Let's go to agenda item 4, which is the approval of the June 17, 2026 minutes. Someone have any revision to those minutes? No, you got a motion?
I move.
The second.
Is there any objections to the motion to approve the minutes? Seeing or hearing none, the minutes are approved.
Let's go to agenda item 5, which is the upper staff report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The first round of interviews for the permanent director of public accountability is happening on July 17th. The recruiter asked for 2 volunteers from this body to participate in summer. And we don't have a second person, so I'm renewing the request. And see if anybody, it's pretty much all like that. Friday the 17th. You like to do that?
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry, Director, we lost the. We're still on this. We're still recording, but the visual went away. Okay, our apologies. We're back.
Okay. So was there anybody else who was interested? Let's see, which one? Let's one Chuck Cody. So
No, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. Okay.
okay. Thank you, Board Member Temple. I will pass your name along to the
Yes, we ate the room.
I think-
good.
The only thing that I would add is for that, Porter Allen, well, we had a session. You were both there for that, right? Where we all gave feedback. Okay, fair. I just wanna make sure that. Were there minutes from that session?
No, I don't.
If-
Other than- Yeah, the because,
Helpful board perspective.
right,
Thanks for volunteering.
yes, very much. Last night, the council took action on the police equipment report and on the MOU compendium. The board had submitted a letter to the council and, regarding the police equipment report. And Councilmember Blackaby meeting, department and the board for their work on that. And so that was passed unanimously or accepted and approved unanimously, as was the MOU component. Coming up at the July 14th council meeting, the council will be taking up the issues of revising or modifying authorized uses of helicopters and canines. And a separate item, reinstating the authority to use tear gas and other chemical agents. This board had submitted a letter to the letters to the Public Safety Policy Committee on both items, one on helicopters and canines. It's part of the agenda item submitted by Councilmember Pesciolani. It's attached to her item, and I'll be sending the one on tear gas to the council as a supplemental agenda item. Also on the 14th, two more appointments to this board will be made. The mayor's appointment. Actually, the mayor made both appointments. One is her regular appointee, and then she also appointed somebody to be the alternate. And then also on July 14th, a special 4 o'clock meeting will be the presentation of the annual report with the PAB and the ODPA, which we must finalize this evening to get to the clerk. And that is it's.
Do you accept any questions? Yeah.
Yes, I.
Any questions from the board on those items? Any questions? I think also I want to flag to the board that we are trying to reinstate the representatives from Berkeley Law helping in the consent process.
Yes, and I do need to follow. Actually, what if they reach out to me and I still need to.
Okay, great. Yeah, so historically, I don't know how long it's been going on for, maybe like 4 years, 5 years.
Well, it started when I was last here, so probably in 20. Must have been pre-pandemic.
You just want to explain what it is.
Oh, yes, so, as a project, a clinical project of, Berkeley Law. Students can sign up, excuse me. To assist complainants. Members of the public who file complaints with the Police Accountability Board. And basically be an advocate, for them. Which could include, assisting, being there when they interview, helping gather evidence and, ultimately, if there is a hearing, to represent them kind of thing. So we found it, to be very valuable, because actually, I guess it started when we were still the Police Review Commission. And it was really helpful because, usually the complaints are not the kinds of cases that are worth it for attorneys to come in and represent a complainant for. And the process can be rather daunting, especially when they are in a hearing and they're subject to cross-examination by police officers, and they're represented either by an officer or by counsel. And so it's, we found incredibly helpful for the complainant to feel at least a little more comfortable bringing complaints and seeing them through. And the law students, we found they did a great job as well, and so I think it's a good experience for the students.
Okay. If that is, if there's nothing further, we'll go to agenda item 7, which is the chief's report. Lead Chief Lewis and Solomon.
Sorry, are we skipping 6?
6 is, chair, sorry, excuse me, chair and board member report. Do any board members have, yes, board member Allen?
For your request, I wrote up my notes, which I hope you remember flawlessly. This is about the webinar we attended on July 2nd with reporting on a study done by Dr. De Figueiredo from the University of Connecticut Law School. He and his colleagues have done a study of the use of drones. My notes are very scattered. We've asked him for his presentation, and hopefully we'll get that. So this is just mine, and then, the holes he can fill in. They studied 3 departments, San Francisco, Chula Vista, and a large county in Virginia, the name of which I forgot to write down. That county has a mix of rural, urban, and suburban areas. The claims that they investigated were that drones reduce response times and improve officer safety. The critics of drones cite privacy concerns, reduced accountability, and no empirical evidence of their efficiency. So their study looked at all of those issues. They quantified response time, clearance time, and crime outcomes. They found that call response times decline with drones by an average of 93 seconds. Overall, drones are faster in response time, but don't accelerate officer arrivals except in theft cases. In terms of clearance times, the study found essentially no difference between drones and officers. For crime incidents, the study found not much reduction between drones and officers, except in auto theft cases. The study speculated that the best use of drones may be targeting outdoor crimes. Hopefully, Board Member Walls can add some context.
Okay. I think you mean board member Wilson.
Wilson.
Yeah. I don't think I can provide more context other than to say this is was a presentation of a research effort that's being funded, I believe, by the Arnold Foundation, which is doing quite a bit in the space of surveillance technology. And it was really interesting to see the analysis that was presented by the lead kind of academic during the call that board member Allen and I participated in. But also present were 2 other researchers who are doing a project right now in Philadelphia. And they are using 100% actual data. The professor that we saw from University of Connecticut is using both actual data and imputed data, because there isn't enough utilization of drones in the DC metro region where his studies focused, as opposed to the Philadelphia study, which is using 100% actual data, looking at many of the same outcome measures. And so in addition to asking for the slide deck from the presentation that we were able to see, I also followed up with those 2 other individuals that are doing the Philadelphia study to see if we could get that data. But the last piece of interest is that apparently Arnold, this is what we heard, I think, were you in that spring chair? Arnold is purportedly interested in doing something in Berkeley. So very interesting idea if it's true to pair any implementation of enhanced surveillance architecture in our city with a true RCT, like random control trial. That'd be really interesting and would love to see us contribute to that. So that was that.
The additional studies are all funded by the islands.
I don't know who funded that. That one.
Okay. Any other board member reports? I'm sure that I have reports, I just cannot think of one except for that, so I can only listen. Yeah, I'll cover my updates during the subcommittee. Okay. Is there someone from the department here?
Yes, Chief Lewis is online.
Chief, I don't know if you can hear us.
Great. I just wasn't sure we were back at my item.
Yes, thank you for following the agenda item closer than I was.
I only was because Jose helped out. That's all. And Lieutenant Perkins should be there in person soon to cover the remainder of the meeting for any questions that come up after Chief's report as well, if she's not there already. In light of the conversation that you all just had, I would absolutely love to see any materials you get from that study as well. I'd be interested in seeing the presentation materials as well for the drone information, if possible, if you're able to share. Okay, thank you. So I did want to start talking a little bit about staffing. So with the council adoption of the fiscal year 27 budget, I'm sure you're aware that the new current authorized strength for sworn personnel is at 164. We are currently sitting right at about 164 now, with a couple caveats. One is of that 164, only 148 are trained and authorized to operate as solo officers. And of those 148, at least 16 are either on modified duty or off fully due to either workers' comp, military leave, FMLA, or other authorized leaves. So obviously this puts quite a strain on our ability to maintain service levels as well as staff a lot of our administrative functions like our training team, hiring, policy review, and some of our specialized duties. With that being said, we are looking towards staffing for our September patrol timesheet. Currently, what that's going to likely require is reducing or shutting down some of those units that I mentioned to ensure that we have adequate patrol staffing. At the same time, I'm happy to share that this Friday we do have a recruit graduating from the academy. We have a couple more planned to graduate over the next month and a half or so. We have 4 officers in our field training program that could move to solo status over the next several months. We do know we have someone who is resigning and will be gone in about a week and a half. We've got some others that have indicated intent to resign or retire over the course of the year. So it's a very thin staffing margin. You'll hear me talk more and more about our solo officer level as an indicator of what real staffing we're experiencing in light of the fact that a lot of our folks will be in training. And if you recall, it can take up to 18 months or more to hire someone, get them through a police academy, get them through field training before they are able to effectively support our operations. So with that, we're just going to maintain our healthy hiring pipeline and continue focus on ensuring that we have our patrol response. That will lead me right into talking a little bit about some crime cases. 4th of July weekend was extremely busy for our teams, and I wanted to talk just about a couple cases. Friday night, officers responded to an armed robbery at a dispensary in South Berkeley. In that particular case, several masked suspects held employees at gunpoint while robbing the business. We're not able to arrive prior to those suspects fleeing the area, but detectives are now actively working that case and trying to obtain additional surveillance footage and follow up some leads. On Saturday afternoon, we had a suspect follow a woman into her downtown apartment building. He cornered her in an elevator, exposed himself, and groped her. Thankfully, when the elevator got to another floor and opened, there was someone out there. She was able to call for help and get off the elevator. Officers arrived, and that suspect attempted to hide in a neighboring garage, but was apprehended and arrested for both attempted rape and a couple other offenses. Finally, on Saturday night, so 4th of July, we no longer have, as you recall, 4th of July event in the marina. However, we were experienced an influx of what they counted at, estimating around 6,000 vehicles went to the marina to watch these shows over in the Golden Gate Bridge in the San Francisco area. That was a significant traffic gridlock and required a lot of officers down there to help safely clear that area. It sounds like it took about 2 hours to safely clear that area. Okay. I did want to say, in addition to the policy items mentioned by Director Lee that will be on the July 14th agenda, we also published the RFP yesterday. I wanted to acknowledge and thank the board member Wilson for all of her help in getting that ready to go. That opens yesterday and will be open until August 20th. For the July 14th meeting, Deputy Chief Tate will be representing the department to answer any questions related to Councilmember Kesarwani's items. If there are any other questions that the board has in the run-up to that time, DC Tate's out this week, but if you submit them via email, we can work on getting answers ready and prepared for the meeting on the 14th. Finally, our Community Services Bureau has their next Coffee with the Cop scheduled for July 21st. That one's going to be at Dream Fluff Donuts at 9 a.m. I wanted to extend an invitation to both the director's office and the board if anyone wants to stop by and say hello to the team that'll be out there. That's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Oh, say it again, Chief, for that? You done?
I'm sorry, say it again.
The date of that last item you said?
Coffee with the Cop, July 21st, Dream Fluff, 9 a.m.
Okay. Do any board members have questions? I have a few questions, Chief. The first is, could you walk through your update on the early warning system that you provided to us yesterday? I don't know if you have that in front of you. If you aren't able to walk through, I do have specific questions I could ask.
I can just talk generally about it. So, over the course of the last couple of years, we've been doing a random audit quarterly where we randomly select 5 officers and look at the items for review that are covered in the early warning system policy. That includes stop data, use of force data, sick leave usage, things like that. This was also the first cycle where the benchmark analytics platform was operational and running with our data. And so we took a look both at the traditional audit and ran that audit. Also, Arlo Malmberg, who is the head of our OSPAA, mirrored the type of analysis that Benchmark Analytics was doing. So basically, he got a view behind the scenes of how they developed that platform. And so he was able to run both the benchmark and then a developed platform together and see as additional audits for us. What's interesting or challenging for me a little bit is the primary indicator for benchmark analytics about whether someone is needing early intervention is sustained complaints. And for me, I want a system that helps us get to understand before the complaints occur. Obviously, it's helpful to know that there's sustained complaints because we can then hopefully prevent more serious issues. But for me, that's late in the process. I'd like to try to address issues earlier on in the process. And so, we're going to continue to pilot the benchmark analytics and see whether we can get to better information from that system and or whether we can build our own system that captures that at, obviously not having to pay the cost of that contract.
That's helpful. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, VP. I'm new to this, but I was around a long time ago. And in the early 90s, Chief Butler had an early warning system that, brought people in a non-disciplinary context. The patrol captain, sergeant, and somebody else would plan stuff maybe. And really, the idea would be to target people at a very early stage prior to them having crossed the lines that required any formal action in hopes that that might deter that kind of thing. Any idea what happened to that system?
No, you're exactly right. And it's one of the things that we really raised up as a valuable piece of information as we stepped into the early intervention system. So you're right. Many decades ago, we started running that. And then during the the Fair and Impartial Policing Task Force work, what they did was look at our existing EWS and say, well, it doesn't quite have the specificity. It doesn't lay out exactly what we could be looking at. There was no formality. And so what it allowed us to do is one, we made updates to the policy that called out stop data, use of force data as categories that we would absolutely look at for this early intervention or early review. And what we also realized was knowing that we're a small agency, your sergeants will mostly know what your folks are doing. If you don't look at data, sometimes you can't really draw an understanding about what's really occurring. And the officers don't have good feedback loops, or the supervisors as well. So we built on the EWS, developed the EIS with expanded parameters, and now we're looking to actual analytical tools, whether it's through a company like Benchmark Analytics or through our own systems like our Transparency Hub, where we collect our real data and are able to do analysis on it.
A question. I heard a couple weeks ago hints that the department was, hinting or suggesting that the what Benchmark does can be replicated within the department. And there was a sentence in your report that said that, I'm just going to read it so it's clear. It said that every officer flagged by Benchmark would also have been identified by the department's internal review process. And could you shed some more light on what you mean by that?
What that means, yeah, is because their flags came up. Their primary flags are for existing complaints, and so we say our internal review process, it's our complaint process. So right. So I could have done the same thing and looked, okay, well, during the last year period, who are all the people that got complaints? Oh, therefore, those are all the people that I need to do early intervention in. And great, that's a class of individuals we want to make sure we're doing coaching on and approaching that. I'd rather get a little bit farther back in the process and be able to say, oh, your sick usage is up, or your use of force related to your arrests compared to your peers is up. Can we get you training? Can we make sure you're getting adequate time off? Is there a wellness issue that we can get you support with? I'd rather be addressing it at that level before we ever get to the space where we are initiating complaints against individuals.
Okay, so you weren't referring to the random 4 or 5.
No. Sorry if that wasn't clear.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Can't the system be configured to take into account factors that you are interested in?
Yes, well, so that's the other thing, and I would be happy if you want to. I know, Chair Caetano, you've been deeply involved in this from the beginning in the RFP process. Happy to bring you in and have Arlo walk you through. One of the problems that we are seeing is that the way that Benchmark does the analysis, it's not, you can't see the clear indicator. The threshold or the algorithm that they run is not as easily apparent. But what they've told us is that they're heavily reliant on use of force and complaints. And so we would rather have the broader, one of the things that was a selling point for me was their discussion of there's 60 plus categories that they'll be looking at and data points, and all of those points together will help us do it. Well, what we found is it's weighted very heavily towards complaints as the indicator. Whether we can tweak it and ask them to broaden that algorithm or change that algorithm, that's a conversation that we've started with them or had with them. And that's why I'm not saying it's an absolute no-go with Benchmark. I need to see them produce more along the lines of what they promised us they could produce if we're going to continue a relationship with them. The other thing I do acknowledge and want to, really clearly say is I get that having an external tool that does the analysis is in and of itself has value, right? Because then it's not the department checking the department's own stuff and saying everything is fine. So I totally get that. And I know, I think it was in this, what I wrote to you also is, we have contract money with Benchmark through February of 2027. It'll give us at least 3 more auditing cycles to look and see. And we're going to continue to push the vendor to produce something that works for us, that gives us what we're after.
Yeah, thank you. I think we will touch base offline for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think just for context, we were waiting to engage with you until the system was up and running, so we could get some first results. So now that we're in that phase, I think it makes sense to circle back. Two other short questions. One is, what is the level of authorized number of officers versus current sworn staff right now?
164. So
And you're currently at 140.
we're currently, no, we're at 164 if you count people in field training, people in an academy, or we have 2 people who are pre-academy, start an academy in about 3 weeks. So if you add all those people together, the problem being of the 148, not everybody's healthy. And the gap between 164 and 148, all those people are not currently able to work solo. Either they're still in the academy or they're in field training. And we know we do lose people in the academy. We do lose people in field training program.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Last thing is more taking back what report that I forgot to give and saying it to you directly is that I went for a ride along. I already sent you an email, and out of that ride along, I formally commended an officer for spending about 2 hours of the shift helping with an unhoused lady who was stuck, and staying with her and calling about 5 different emergency vehicles, and coordinating with about 5 different dispatches over the course of that shift. So I really appreciated his work, and there were a lot of community members from Oakland who came and checked on him and checked on us, and all of them walked away feeling like the situation was being handled well. So I,
Great.
thank you for send my thanks along to him, and I just wanted to say that publicly as well.
Great. Thank you so much for your feedback.
Yeah.
And again, just to extend that again, anytime board members want to go on ride-alongs, just let us know. We'll get you scheduled for that. I think it's a really valuable experience.
Yeah, it did bring up the question for me of the mobile crisis units, which I had talked with Sergeant Egbert about, but that's the
Correct.
third conversation as well. So we can maybe have that as well.
I tell you, I grew up in this agency with a well-functioning mobile crisis unit where they deployed with us. They deployed solo in the field. It was a really great symbiotic relationship where we could pass calls back and forth depending on the nature of the call. That's not what we've experienced the last couple of years, just with staffing challenges in that unit and their comfort level of responding to calls without police response. But I certainly know that was a hard one to not be able to budget for in this last budget cycle.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a question of the city's priorities, and I see other cities allocate, a lot of millions of dollars to it with a lot of good results. So hopefully we can find a way for that next time we can talk about ways we can work together on. But okay, thank you for being here, and we'll look for, is it Lieutenant Perkins or?
Yeah, if she hasn't shown up yet, I'll check in, but she should be coming soon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Take care. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to subcommittee reports.
Okay. I'll start with the metrics and operations.
We have anything, we have
You
a
do.
finalized,
Yeah.
what the policy? Yes, it's actually, I reviewed all the city attorney's comments, thank you. City attorneys that assisted in the review. And I have the document reformatted, so I'm just going to be sending it to the chair. To the director, and then we can get it circulated, so that feels super exciting. So.
Okay. Outreach and engagement. Any updates for this meeting? Board Member Buzzwell, Turco?
No,
Okay.
I was just confirming which committee I was on.
Policies and practices on encampment clearances. Vice Chair?
I think I've reported before that I have kind of a draft policy that was developed by 2 different phases of wonderful students that I was working with. And I did reach out to the chief, I think just yesterday, to see if now that the RFP is out, we have a little bit of a break for the next month or so. We could, she could assign someone to work with me to review this draft policy and to see what next steps might be on that. At some point, we should have a meeting where we discuss the issue, various options, how other cities approach encampment clearance. And when we do that, I'd like to invite some community members that are very interested in this issue to be formally part of that conversation as opposed to just making public comment. That I'm not sure when that will be.
Have you considered inviting Dr. Arredondo as well, who is the management?
That's a great idea. Yeah, I think the first step is for the department to see what this draft proposal is, because what it is a policy that does not have the police leading in-camera clearances. And apparently the state sort of model policy does not have police leading. Other municipal agencies are the lead and the police are only called in certain situations. And so, you know, I think one question that will arise is this even under our purview? Because the recommendation would be, this is not a police forward activity. So I want to start with the department and see what they think and then, you know, take it from there. But
I mean, yeah, policies and practices, we say what they should and should not be doing all the time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
but I hear what you're saying. Thank you for the answer.
Okay. I'll move on to our liaisons. Chair for EIS or use of force. Any?
Yeah, I mean, we just heard the IS update, so.
Okay.
So.
And
The use of, did you say use of force?
Yeah.
For use of force, I'm meeting with the department on Friday. And I have almost finished and going to send deadlines to them tomorrow. After that meeting, we're gonna have another meeting or two next week. And then at the end of those meetings, will come a recommendation for the board at the second meeting in July. So I would advise all of you to be ready for a very long session on the use of force policy in the second meeting in July, which is July 22nd. 22nd. The department has advised that they would like to bring into council the September 17th meeting, I believe, September 15th. And so because we have August recess, the July 22nd meeting is kind of our date to figure it out. If we don't figure it out July 22nd, we might have to have a meeting before this 15th. But I think we do have at least one meeting on September 7th or 8th or something like that. Is that right?
9th.
The 9th, okay. So that that September 9th meeting will not be, it's too close to the council meeting to provide anything more than last minute suggestions. And so I'm really hopeful that we can figure out everything at the July 22nd meeting, but if not, I might request a second meeting instead of the 9th, or to move the meeting from the 9th up a week. I'm just flagging that because this item is very large and I've tried to narrow it down as best as I can, and we'll see how much more narrow we can get after our meetings over the next few days. Are there any questions on that? Welcome.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Okay. If there are no questions, Vice Chair, are there any general updates on regulations?
no, we have a special city council meeting set, I believe, for July 20th. We'll be meeting closed session with council to address the issue of anonymous.
Okay. With that, Chair, that concludes our subcommittee and liaison reports.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, we'll go to 9A, which is the discussion of the annual report. Director, or yes, would you like to introduce that at all?
Well, we have the version that you see in the packet today incorporates the comments that we received at the last meeting. And we share, you said you had some red lines. Yeah, so I don't know how we want to do this, if you want to go section by section. Ask for comments or. Other people, other board members have comments.
Could you just recap the comments that we had last time and then the changes that we made, what you made in response? Is there a way you
Let's see. One of my staff can find the notes. I think
I think the recap was primarily, if I may, Director. One, in terms of the stop date analysis, we did change up the wording based on the feedback we got last time. Um, I guess I'll describe it to be less conclusive and more of providing the data, and giving an overview of more of a descriptive analysis. The other part were smaller edits, like for example, um, acknowledging one of the limitations of we talked about staff and being short-staffed, but we didn't really talk about the vacancies that the board experienced throughout the year. We implemented those changes, as well as just some of the changes to the graphs that were flagged for us last time. I think that was the overview of it. Sorry, I'm struggling to remember the specific changes per se. But there weren't too many from the first compared to the first draft that the board had reviewed. So this version, we caught some minor grammatical leftover words from when we published this version in your packet. So there is a slightly more updated, nothing substantive has changed between this version. And I'm not sure if the rest of the team has anything else to add, but that's my quick recap.
Located in my notes, excuse me. One of the comments was we had previously focused on decreasing the number of complaints. And so we de-emphasized that and talked about the number of unique complaints, which did increase. We have the quarterly breakdown of the timing of when complaints have been submitted. There was some confusion because we talked about the number of allegations we've actually received versus the number of that were actually noticed. So we focused on those two numbers further. We talked about you commented about the rate of agreement, and while there was between the PAB and the chief, and while there was a great deal of agreement overall, it was zero as to sustained. And the number of policy issues, we highlighted that because we got a comment. We focused on that work. That the board actually did, despite being hobbled by vacancies. And love comment on the stock data, which Mr. Medillo already that's all I have to add.
Thank you. Are there any, I think, we shouldn't go section by section, we've done that twice, but I do think that we should get feedback from board members if there is any feedback.
I have feedback, but I'll see if that is.
Board member Allen, board member Wessel Trocco.
Yeah, I had some.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, most of mine is just some like kind of like simple errors. It's mostly on the numbers where there's not consistency. So the first is on page 23. Where it says the 69 allegations investigated presenting PAB 13 were sustained, 5.7% were sustained. And 14%, 6.1% were not sustained. I think those numbers, I think that those percentages are incorrect, because in the table below, I think it copies it, and it says that the percentage is 18.8, not 5.7.
Sorry, that was page 20.
Page 5.
Page 5, yeah, sorry, it's page 23 of the packet.
I'm sorry, which one?
Yeah, it's no problem. So the paragraph says of the 69 allegations investigated by the ODPA, 13 or 5.7% were sustained.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, on page 35, table 2, it says subcommittees conclude prior to December 31st, 2026. Which I assume that's supposed to be 2025, or is it supposed to?
Yes,
Page
2025.
17 of the report. Um, there's a weird, I don't know if you meant this bullet on page 23 of the report. You see how it says at the top, population-based assessments are widely used within policing because they provide a descriptive benchmark comparing, and then it's just.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
we addressed that one.
Okay.
Oh. The second.
Am I looking at an old one, or did you change it since?
Some of these changed today, like before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Um. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to make something from note that I could have explained this further. I can't remember what my note means there. Okay. Yeah, I might have to go back to that one. Okay. On page 52, or I'm sorry, page 34 of the report. Um, Sometimes I'm kind of, so it's possible that there isn't a mistake here, but um, the terms reportable use of force and individual force uses are used and the numbers are kind of similar. So at the top, it says the Berkeley Police Department documented 276 reportable use of force incidents. I wasn't sure if that should actually be 1,276, because then you say of the 1,276 individual force uses documented in the paragraph below that. Do you see that?
Yeah. And actually, this was something that I had talked to Arla about to help me clarify. So when we talk about the individual, like sometimes an incident might have multiple officers that each use different force. So that gets counted as an individual force versus a reportable use might talk about the incident instead of just the individual officers. Hence why there's the two numbers.
Okay, that's an amazing coincidence.
Yeah,
And then it seemed curious to me that you said approximately 316 individual subjects. Why not just say involving 316 individual subjects?
We could, sorry, I'm thinking back to the thought process. There are updates to the data, that shifted our numbers a little bit while we were writing this report. So my thought process was approximately because that's the number we had at that point in time. So I guess it's my way of saying, it might be plus or minus
I
5.
got it. Well, so this might annoy you, but when I do the math on figure 6, I get 1277, not 1276 on that table.
Okay. It might be one of those incidents because at one point it was 275 earlier this year.
Okay.
But we'll review that and we'll make sure it's the most.
Okay. I also, this is related, other numbers that seemed off. Figure 7. It's I get 1,093 on that table on figure 7 when I add up all those ones.
This might be one of the figures we updated.
Okay.
So just scrolling through two different ones. Yeah. Okay.
It would also change, I think, the percentage that you have in the key takeaways. I think it's should be 67%, not 78%.
Okay.
You want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. Another one where I think that I think it's 300, I think you say 316, maybe it's 300. Sorry, I'm on page 50. I'm on page 36 of the report. Total unique subjects associated with force incidents. I think you say elsewhere 316, but then there it's 315. So that would just be another one to just check that
Yeah.
number is correct.
That's why he said approximately.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we had updated that one.
Okay. So then I'm looking at figure 10, the total incidents. It would seem to me that those the reported number should total 275 in that wheel there, with that paragraph.
Yeah,
Oh,
we updated that one as well.
Okay. Okay. I think that's the main stuff I saw.
Mhm. And some of these we addressed earlier today. Okay.
Michelle?
First, I want to say thank you for changing some of the infographics earlier on in the report that we discussed. I continue to be concerned about the entire section that contains the Berkeley PD data. And I know that I think you have to finish this tomorrow. So what I did is I just highlighted entire paragraphs or sentences that I thought could come out. I still feel like this reads very much as something that's not apologizing, explaining away any disparities that are in the data and doing so like in a manner that is repetitive, and you wonder at some point like why we keep saying these things. So I think that continues to be a concern I have with this report. So I don't know what would be helpful. I also think, Chair, just maybe too late. But I've highlighted in the report sentences that I think should just come out. Because although I think Chair or Jose, that you indicated that you had edited to take out some of the expository, I think a lot of it is still in here. For example, however, modern policing research consistently recognizes that stop disparities are influenced by a combination of policing activity, exposure-related factors, and broader social conditions rather than policing practices alone. That type of sentence is repeated multiple times in this section. The inference is made that we don't really have to be concerned about the disparities because there's more homeless people that are Black. I mean, I just feel like it's very problematic still. And I'm not sure what to do about that. The other piece that I think I have requested is some verbiage around work with the department in response to some of the issues that council raised last year. A desire to see us at least define our variables in the same way. And I didn't see that, but it could be that I missed it. I didn't see that you added anything about that. Did you somewhere? On the board?
Sorry, can you repeat the adding verbiage?
I would ask specifically, because I remember in last year's presentation to council, there was a lot of concern expressed about the different metrics that we were using versus the department. Particularly around the stop data, and there was a request and a commitment made that we were going to work with the department prior to issuing this report to align or not align, but explicitly explain why in that instance the metrics or variables we were using. I know that staff did meet with the department extensively, but I don't see anything in this report that describes either the concerns that were raised last year or the work that was done to address those. And I thought in our last meeting, I did ask for that. It could it be just even dropped in a footnote, that this is what was done. We're now using all of the same metrics to assess whether or not there are disparities in stops, or we're not, or our findings are exactly the same, or they're not. And here's why. I just don't see anything about that in this report.
Okay.
Did I make that up? Had I made that comment last time? I thought that I did.
Yeah, no, you made the comment. It's just an oversight. We had noted that we would add the footnote, which isn't included. And the reason it was a footnote is because the analysis in itself builds off of and expands on what BPD currently uses, sort of addressing the concerns that council had expressed about not necessarily using one or the other, but like why couldn't they overlap in whole analysis? Just because BPD's analysis tells us one story, ours also contributes, but it doesn't necessarily touch on some of the other elements. So we brought it together to where it's using both what we had proposed and what the department uses and what the state uses for their analysis.
Okay. So it just may be that it's too late to address any of this, but I just want to strongly say that I think there's still significantly too much language that is explaining away these very significant racial disparities that we continue to see, even to the point of saying, well, we have this fair and impartial policing thing, which was focused on stop disparities, but really there's these other tests that may be more important. I don't think that's our place at all, and I just object to that. So it's fine with me if it's too late to make changes, but I did want to sort of put that on the record.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, I have the same comment, so I have some red lines that I've been. So I have the same feedback, but I do not think that our feedback was implemented on the explaining away, on taking away these caveats to the extent that I was hoping. And so I have suggestions for how to fix that. Specifically, we have a section on page 18 of the report on methodological considerations and analytical limitations. I think that, as I tried to explain at the last meeting, that anything that has to do with a hedge on the data that might explain inferences that could be drawn from the data that need to be included in the report should be included in this section.
That's a good idea.
And the data itself can speak for itself in the second section. And we do not need to say anything beyond what the data says itself. I agree with this sentence about, however, modern police, we don't even have a footnote for that. We haven't been presented with that evidence. I don't know how I would be able to sign on to that sentence without having looked at the report that you're referring to. So I think that, my recommendation is to strike that sentence and to strike the paragraph after that as well, the search with Native American, etc. Because that is the type of sentence that should be included in methodological limitations, not in the presentation of the data itself. I think that the second part you go down to the next page, to page 24, where it says, as a descriptive measure, this finding may indicate blah, blah, blah. However, population-based benchmarks has an important methodological limitations. Again, this is another sentence that should go in the methodological limitations. And this paragraph, actually, I mean, the whole paragraph is something that would go in methodological limitations as opposed to in the presentation of the data itself. And I think that if you were to take that feedback and put those types of sentences into the methodological section, my request would be that the methodological considerations and analytical limitation section, you might be able to reduce the redundancy by simply laying it down in 5 paragraphs as opposed to sprinkling it throughout the report. I don't want to overcorrect in response to certain council members' comments about what our data should and shouldn't do, should and shouldn't say. I would note that there were council members that disagreed with some of the strong comments of last council, and so it was not a universal view that our report should align universally with the department's report. And in fact, I think we're doing slightly a disservice by explaining away things without evidence, you know, in ways that sort of like suggests that there's nothing to see here without having done any sort of study yourself. So I don't really want that to be the takeaway from reading our annual report on this second thing. I think I would feel very comfortable going before the council and saying, here's what the data says. We don't have an interpretation of what the data says. That's for you. We are just simply analyzing the data, or like we're simply providing you with that data. You can take it and do with it what you will. That's not really what this report is, you know, lending itself toward, at least in this particular section. So I'm hoping that we can agree on that, and that, you know, we can make those edits before it goes to the council. I'm happy to make the changes that I'm suggesting and provide it to you tonight. But that's, I think, the overall, without seeing the specific red lines, I don't know if the board would feel comfortable with that, but that's sort of my proposal on this particular section.
I'm very comfortable with your proposal. I bet there's a lot of alignment in what we've flagged here. I just want to clarify what I meant by addressing council's comments last year. I do think it's important, as we are an appointed body of council, that we indicate or express that we are responsive, we hear what they say. So what I heard last year was not, or maybe it's what I chose to hear, but not that our data needs to align 100%, like our the actual analytical results, but rather confusion about why we were using kind of completely different tests for racial disparities. And so all I'm suggesting is that we reflect the fact that we did hear that. And here's what we've done. We met with the department. Here's the 4 tests they use. 3 of them we're also using, but in addition, we're using 2 others because we think these others are also very important. That's all I'm suggesting, not that our data, you know, our results match the department. So I just wanted to clarify that. There's just nothing in here about responding to the pretty extensive feedback that we got. And I think that it's important that we do that. So I'm happy to make a motion that to defer to the chair to make your red line edits, and I'm happy to do that.
Let's hear what the program is.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, let me first so if I understand correctly, Josh, your point is strip out the methodological, basically numbers speak for themselves, one section is lay it out, other sections saying for the following reasons, really hell knows what that means. And that's basically it. I mean, because there are, you know, because this is a fairly well trodden bunch of issues, right? And I mean, disparities are all over the place. Generation, geography are, you know, massive disparities. How's really housing, massive disparities, mentally ill or not, what massive disparities all over the place. And there's explanations or there's not explanations, and bias is a possible explanation or not, or whatever. So just put all the stuff in a methodological section and, let them figure it out for themselves
Yes.
and assume, yeah, and spell it out very clearly and go, yeah, so.
That is my suggestion.
Chair, is it possible, do you think it makes sense to put up on the screen the red lines and then
We can
so
do
that so that the rest of the board and staff can see, and then I feel more comfortable with, first of all, I'm gonna say to the vice chair, you know, I think there is time, there's not a lot of time, but I think these are important enough changes that you're fighting for us, that we should make the effort to incorporate them. And but I would like the entire board, I would like to make sure that the entire board, at least a majority of them, would agree. And so that's why I'm suggesting putting them up for the board to see.
Maybe we could, I don't know if we could move on to another item. Or you think.
Recording in progress.
Okay, he's right.
I'm happy to show that screen. I think I did at this point. If this is what the board wants, I mean, like, I think the question. Would you like to see what the
Yes,
suggestions are?
Yes.
You would, okay, that's good enough for me. I don't want to, I don't want to prevent anyone from. Let's see if I can do this. That's good.
can you say what page you're on?
Yeah, 1 second. Come here.
Yeah, where's everybody go to see it here?
I'm gonna put.
Yeah, that's.
We could also just move the projector closer.
That's not me. Okay, yeah, you can see that.
Now, what page is it?
Page 18 of the report.
This is the red one.
No, that's not. I'm sorry, so I can scroll.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is the section that was in, we include different. Different of the sentences that talk about couching the. You know, the inferences that can be drawn from the data. I would just flag that in this section here, we do have this. We have this sentence already included, right? Which explains that they are intended to identify broad patterns and disparities rather than establish definitive causal conclusions. After this sentence is sort of where I would propose adding different sentences that are found later. Let me show you some of the examples. And then also part here. So I took this sentence and I made it a footnote because again, I'm just trying to take the methodology and put it to the footnote. So it's not only about inferences, but also just anything that's sort of couching the data. We can move it to the side. There's also, if we scroll down here, that's where this sentence came from. This is another sentence about sort of warning, anything that's like a warning sign. Warning, caution should be exercised. That sort of language would be distilled and moved up into that paragraph, that section that I flagged earlier. If it is duplicative, it will be deleted of other sentences that I'm flagging or combined into others. This is another one. I know it's redlined as a delete, but it's essentially this would also be moved and considered as part of the well, sorry. This one I'm proposing deleting because I don't know what modern policing research we're referring to at all. And there's no footnote here, so I'm not sure how I can sign on to that really. This one would be moved up into the above section on methodological limitations. We're all tracking so far.
Sorry.
I'm on page now 24. It starts with as a descriptive measure. This one would be moved up. Move up. Move up. And basically reduced to a single sentence, which I think it can be. Same thing with this one. This is another sentence where it's again sort of like couching the data with an explanation of what might limit what it says.
I think it's everything that starts with consequently. You don't have that highlighted, but as you can see.
Yes,
here,
this is right here. Yes, another example.
and the next paragraph on the next one.
And the next one starts with consequently as well.
No, for this reason, population-based benchmark.
Or this, yeah,
Accordingly.
yeah, it's like throughout the entire thing.
Yeah.
So I see. I think I had more than here.
Like a homeless section.
Yeah.
Page 46 of the packet.
Page 46 of the book.
Page 28.
Page
I don't know, I have those highlighted, you don't.
Oh, I didn't. I didn't do this one. Yeah, I didn't see this one as being a couch like. Yeah, I mean, this one is within the context of the unhoused conversation. I think, how about this? How about after the sentence, adding a sentence that simply says, however, this, this, the number is, the number is stark, and, we think it. I don't know, to me, out of all the data, this number about 20%, of all stops being unhoused people was the most significant number to me that I wanted to highlight that at some part, and I didn't see it really highlighted as a sort of like our collective flag for the council. And to me, I think adding that would be, that was the second one that I was going to make that separate and apart from what we're talking about anymore.
Can you tell me, I'm not super clear on what is this table on page 29? What is this telling us?
It's just telling you the racial breakdown of people who were stopped. And then this number here was not changed. It should have been 79.4.
Okay, so wait, so 79.4% of people who were stopped were perceived as housed.
Right.
And of that category, 29% were Black, 33% were white.
Correct.
Etc. And then 20.6% were perceived to be unhoused.
Right.
And of that, 42% were Black, 24%. And so then we have below this table. This finding suggests that disparities in homelessness, behavioral health response, and public space exposure are likely contributing factors influencing aggregate racial stop disparities in Berkeley.
And how did they come to that conclusion?
I don't know. That's why I don't love this section either, but not this section. I think the data is fine. I just think have the data. I don't.
You want to cut that sentence?
Well, I really, I appreciate the willingness to make these edits, but I don't want to belabor this. So I have a few that are not highlighted by Josh that are highlighted, but I'm okay with just going with what Josh has shown so far. And if you have any more.
Yeah, there's more. Did you have a comment on that?
I mean, I just, And the problem I've seen throughout this one is that stop data in its bare form without any deeper analysis of the population from whom that's updated, without making explicit some of the things referenced as caveats, it's just very difficult to know for any reader to know what to do with it. And that may be an inescapable problem. I understand that. And the caveat you're talking about doing is basically saying, when you read this, don't be dumb, you know, at some point, right? And yet there's a temptation to do that when this thing is presented without any context. I mean, for example, the question of what is the racial makeup of unhoused people is kind of a big question if you're interested in what that data means, and yet in the absence of it, you have no clue as to what the
Then I think it's okay to say, we do not know the racial makeup of
Exactly,
them,
right.
as opposed to like suggesting anything, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm
Because
with
that's
this.
not what this data is. This is just perceived.
Right,
Yeah.
but
And just,
Right. What? Yes. What I'm saying basically is that I haven't got a clue what to make of disparate stop data by race in the absence of, for example, suspect. If I was to look at suspect stops and looking at the racial makeup of suspect stops, in the absence of information about the racial makeup of, in fact, witness testimony regarding what makes up a suspect, I wouldn't have a clue as to how to interpret that. So I'm fine with this being reported out as just raw numbers and figure out what you want to do with it. And with a big old asterisk next to it saying, you know, and here's why you don't want to simply leap all over the place to conclusions when you have no capacity to do so, no legitimate capacity to do so. Great, that's fine. And I do agree that it's belabored it is belabored repeatedly in the body of the work, and it can be cleaned up in that sense. I'm agreeing with you on that. But I think the underlying thing that we're seeing here is in the absence of further information. It's just too tempting to be misleading in the absence of anything else, in the absence of any other context. And I understand it's inescapable at this point, but in the future, any future reports of this type, striving to actually do a little deeper analysis, do a little deeper analysis of makeups of X, Y, and Z population makeups, would be productive to me. You know.
And we did that in a really comprehensive report we submitted last year on fair and impartial policing, which really was designed to look at a whole host of issues, but one of them was racial disparities in stops, and a number of different sort of interventions and measures were put in place to try to address that, including changes to the discretionary stops that officers make. So there has been a very significant effort. It wasn't part of the annual report process. It's referenced in here. And I think that's also one of the things that's so really just disheartening is that the city put in a tremendous investment into fair and impartial policing, this task force, all these recommendations, consultants, etc., number of initiatives, different recommendations. And then we fast forward to now, and even we are now writing a report basically saying, well, yeah, all these disparities still exist, but you know, lots of reasons for it. So, oh well. So it is a little disheartening, but I just will assure you that a lot of work was done, not in this format, to try to really get at the source of racial disparities. Yeah.
Would it be fair to replace the highlighted sentence, oh, you can't see it, with a sentence that essentially says, we don't know, we haven't evaluated the reasons for this, but we think that the city should? Is that like?
this has been an issue since I was involved with the Police Review Commission in the 1980s. It was one of the main issues that had everybody upset. You know,
What is the issue? Sorry, just to put it.
oh, disparate racial stops.
Right.
You know,
but not with particular to unhoused individuals.
That was not an issue. It was just more Black people were getting stopped than anybody else. So it's been around for a long time, and we've never figured out how to address it. So I don't know about, I mean, should have put something in that says we should try and find out why. It's been going on, you know, for 50 years now that I know. At some point, you know, there has to be a way to address this. Now, I'm not saying, I don't think that we have a bigoted police force, okay? I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I don't know why this is existing. We live in a society that is essentially founded on genocide and slavery. And we've never confronted those issues, you know, as a society. So why should, you know, one person be different from another? If you've got a badge and a gun, then you have a different responsibility than I do.
Yeah, I think that what Vice Chair Wilson was saying is that we did a lot of that analysis, and unfortunately, it was not, I mean, there were actually, action items that came out of it.
Well, there were a ton with fair and impartial policing, but
Yeah.
I just think it's like everyone's moved on. Like the data hasn't actually gotten better as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
It shows we've moved on.
Or,
Say that.
this is the assumption, again, the assumption is that, for example, men and women should be stopped at exactly the same levels, right? But in fact, it's more like 10 to 1. Is there some bias on our police bias against men? You know, no, it's like, you know, you say getting better assumes that there's an improper intent that drives the data, drives the disparity. I'm saying, great, if there's evidence for that, awesome, you know, lay it out. But in the absence of that, you know, I can't make that assumption with the pure numbers. I mean, geography, people are not stopped in certain parts of the city anywhere near as much as they're stopped in other parts of the city. You know, age, you know, not that many 80-year-olds are being stopped, right? Why? It's like, it's not because people are prejudiced against younger people, you know, necessarily, right? It's like, again, you can make a lot, you can draw a lot of conclusions for why that's good. You can lay it out very clearly. You know, but and yet the disparities exist, and you don't want those disparities to get better per se, right? So the assumption, if there's an assumption there, it should be made explicit.
Yeah. What I feel is we're spending a lot of time on this. It has to be finalized. I appreciate your sentence, Chair, but like if we're gonna have that sentence, it probably goes somewhere else because it's actually a global sentence. Like we are identifying a lot of disparities here in the data. We don't even purport to try to say why. But we think council, you should look into it. I don't think it's just applicable to this because a number of the tables show significant disparity. And I'm just worried that trying to like heavily edit the report at this time is unwise. So my advice is we don't do that. I think I would like director to circulate to the board because we have a lot of new board members, the fair and impartial policing report that we submitted to council last year. Because it was massive and that was a huge city undertaking that involved the department primarily, but other city agencies as well. So I think it would be important for folks to get up to speed on that a little bit. But I think we should kind of wrap this.
Well, I have 3 things that I wanted to have the board weigh in on, and we weighed in on the first one, and I don't know, we haven't voted on it. But the first one was aligning with what you had said.
Right.
My second point was that I wanted to add to the report was exactly what I wrote here. So this was a second point that I thought was significant that I was going to recommend the board recommend to the council in the way that I've written it out here.
And only related to just the unhoused issue.
that was to me as a new thing that the council, that was new in our report. That the council would, I think will find significant, or at least that I would recommend that they find significant.
Okay,
That is different from last year. I mean, last year we focused on writ large, but now we're focusing on this very particular subset of the population.
mhm.
So that's my second thing. The third thing has nothing to do with this section at all. It has to do with at the very end here, the recommendations. This is in the section on page 44 of the report, challenges encountered during 2025. I added these sentences that basically explain a very particular issue that we had in 2025, where we were not able to weigh in prior to council action occurring on the encrypted radio issue. I don't know if who was here at that point, but tied to that and the many other things that are alluded to in the report where we were not able to provide input before council took official action. For me, my suggestion is that we highlight, and this is something that I've talked sort of offline with different council members about the limitation caused by the charter itself, where we are only reviewing policies 30 days after implementation, as opposed to 30 days before implementation. So our recommendations do not really come at a time when they can actually be taken into account. And that has caused it doesn't align with different statutory regulatory schemes where we do provide input prior to, and there is an entire process. But it has caused issues in other areas where we are not able to weigh in prior to implementation. So that's sort of like another change that I recommend here. One more point of feedback that I had was on we don't mention the letters that we sent on Flock. We sent 2 letters on Flock in 2025. And I just would like a reference under the specific paragraph where we talk about surveillance. I don't know if we need to do anything more than add a footnote that says the Police Accountability Board sent 2 letters that highlighted its recommendation on this particular issue. See letter X and letter Y. That would be my recommendation as well, because those were significant undertaking on our part that have continued relevance, and that's sort of the eye through which I view this annual report.
I think it'd be helpful if the text of the letters are attached to the report. Don't assume that people know what you said.
Okay, I'm not opposed to that in the communication, not in the annual report itself, but in the communication to council. Is that
An addendum?
Yeah, I just don't want it as part of the annual report because it'd make it like really long. But we could, and when we send it,
It's still a pertinent issue.
it is a pertinent issue.
Well, we can hyperlink to them, I think.
We can how about hyperlinking?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that work? Okay, so those are my 4 things that I would like to add. I feel like we've covered. I know you said that you don't want red lines, but I mean, I covered all the red lines, we went through all of them, so I don't know why you changed your mind about that after we went through it. On the first.
That was deleting and moving, and then you were adding new text.
Well, that was for my second.
Yeah.
Which is different,
I didn't understand that.
So I don't know how people want to, if people have thoughts on those 4 things, or I don't know, do you have any comments? You haven't weighed in on the meeting report at all. I want to give it to you, which before we.
Well, I've been waiting on that.
Yes.
And I have full confidence in you taking the input and doing good stuff, right? And seriously, and the key point is that if there is impropriety in the discretion officers are using in making stops such that that is driving this very, we really want to know about that, because that's what we're here for. In the absence of, and as you said, more further investigation would be appropriate. In the absence of that, we know nothing essentially. And that, if that's the thrust of what you're gonna do in the methodology section, yes, that would be awesome from that point.
Okay, great, thank you for the feedback. Are there thoughts on those four items? Yeah,
The one that you, I wasn't totally clear on what you were suggesting that the council look into, other than that it had to do with the unhoused section.
yeah, mainly so like, there are things that are not in our report that could very well, in the council's mind, explain why this is the case, so. Calls for services related to, we haven't identified any of that. And so it's really asking the council to refer back to the department. Some sort of like, come back to us and explain why this number is so high, relative to the population, relative to.
But the number you're talking about is specifically the stops as a percentage. The stops that were unhoused as a percentage of all stops.
Yeah. So it's not, it is not to say that we have a view on that, only that we would like more information on why that's the case from the department itself. We would like to ask the council to ask for more information on that.
To the police department?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can, I mean, I think that because this report is coming to the council, it will logistically make more sense to go to the council than go to us. In the future, just for future annual reports, I do think that when I don't know when we have this data, at what point we have this data, but if we're able to go to the department and ask prior to writing this report and to figure out an answer, that would be helpful as well. But we're not at that point.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, if the question would be why the stops are the number that they are.
Let me put the question a different way.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what percentage unhoused individuals are in Berkeley relative to housed people, but I am going to assume that the number is somewhere around 2 or 3%. I have no idea if that's the case. It might even be less.
Yeah.
To me, the difference between 2 and 3%, which is a number that I'm kind of pulling out of nowhere, but it seems reasonable to that seems pretty high, but reasonable. Yeah. To 20% is very significant, and also it's not significant. It's significant enough that we want to know the reasons for it, the department's reasons for it. Maybe they have and they're allocating a lot of resources to 20% of their stops are going toward an hospital. We want to know why. Like that is really, that's the question.
The city has that data. I don't know how complete it is, but they have they've interviewed and done profiles of people in the encampments, because when they were able to buy motels and convert them into 1-bedroom apartments, they would then match the profiles that they had created of the people in the encampments with the houses, and then begin to reduce unhoused people. So they have some information about the number of people. They've been at it for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the city well knows the number of unhoused people.
Yeah,
and for sure. I think it's like 700. Honestly, it's like very low. Yeah, our population's.
Your guess is more accurate than you realize.
I thought I saw at some point that we have 700 to 1,000 unhoused individuals in Berkeley, and we have a population of like 130,000. So actually, I think I'm off. I think that's 0.6,
no,
0.7%. And so 0.6, 0.7 to 20 to 20% is significant enough that I would like to flag it for the council and to ask them to pay attention to it as well.
Well, they've already been contacted by the fire department because of the disproportionate number of calls.
So I mean, like what can, there are many things that could come out of this. For example, like me and the chief just had an exchange about the mobile crisis unit. Like maybe this can produce like some sort of like, I don't know what can come out of it, but I'm talking about like having some sort of movement toward like funding things that what are the city's priorities? You know, like this seems to me to be a very significant number that can start that conversation.
I completely agree with that. To me, experiencing a snapshot from 30 years ago, the probably a snapshot today, 30 years later. This is what you're asking really is, what is the nature of the work that the police department does on a weekly or annual basis? This is what you're getting at is, what is the bread and butter work of the police department, you know, and how does it differ from, you know, other times or whatever? I think it's an incredibly important number, as you say, and knowing more about that can only lead us to understand work for the department and what it's supposed to be doing and what they're doing much better. So yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I don't, then just, I'm constructing a motion, I'm trying to like get us out of the conversation, and I'm moving toward a motion, I wanna make sure that includes those 4 things that I mentioned, unless people disagree.
I'll
Okay.
make a motion. I move to approve the chair's 4 recommended amendments to the reports.
Right, which may not be reflected in precisely this red line, but we all know that this, what the spirit of those 2 things are.
Yes.
And the things that I did flag about moving things to the front will be consolidated in the methodological, that's what's included, and I just wanna make that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And I'd like folks to consider often methodological sections like that are actually appended. If it gets very long.
That's not part of your motion, that's not, like.
Yeah, I don't think we need to vote on that. I think that could be staff discretion, but if it gets very long, it's odd to have a big, long, clunky methodological section in the body of the report. That's all. Comment to staff, it does not modify my motion, which is on the floor instead.
Do we need to actually say what the 4?
Yeah, can we?
Did you ask for a second?
I did, but we have a problem.
Do we, I guess it's a question if we need to clarify what the 4 things are. for
Do
the
we need the
motion.
clarification? We usually just transparency, we review the record and we go,
It's
that's
on.
how we do the minutes. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So I'm seconding.
Second, okay, let's take a vote, but I would friendly amendment that as a part of the item number 2, I would like to note that per Google search, there are 844 unhoused individuals, which means that there were more stops than unhoused individuals. There were more stops of unhoused individuals than there were unhoused individuals in Berkeley.
But remember, they're not all Berkeley unhoused. We were.
Anyway.
We call them our unhoused in Berkeley. Say
Did you-
caveat.
Okay, let's just decide discussion.
Sorry, let's take it. Second.
Okay.
That seems.
Just to clarify and just to also make sure we're moving along, the motion is to approve the report with Chair Cayetano's 4 suggestions.
Yeah.
Okay, and is moved by the vice chair, seconded by board member Allen. Okay. Let me go back to my attendance list.
You need a recap of what the 4 suggestions were, just before, just.
I mean, I think I can't remember the last 2, that's okay.
It was about the recommendation about the prior to implementation and the.
Oh, yeah.
And then this last one included the footnote about the letters that we sent.
Yep,
I mean, actually, I should abstain because I wasn't here last year. So I don't,
You would be most welcome to vote, because if we had everyone abstain here, we might not be able to make it across.
Okay.
no, since
and you're
I,
just voting on like the content of the.
no, since I seconded it, I'm just joking.
Okay, let's think about it.
All right, board member Allen,
Yes,
board member Buzzell-Charcot,
Yep.
board member The Temple, vice chair Wilson, and Chair Cayetano. Okay, the motion carries. Huge favor if you could email staff your red lines, just because we're on a time crunch in the morning to get it in on time.
I'm gonna stop sharing the screen here. If I can. Can you kick me off the presentation? I don't know. I don't know why I'm still there. That's okay, I don't need to get on. Okay, let's move on. Thank you all, everyone, and thank you to staff. I know that we have a lot of feedback, and this takes a lot of work to put together. So, and it's also like you were not here, and I definitely appreciate that, which is part of the issue.
Yeah. That's has to be
There,
super
I have
fun.
no idea how, like, that, I think there was a lot of effort and time, and ultimately, I really do think it will be really good for the council, and also you're gonna be there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank
It would be
you.
awesome.
I'm not sure.
Oh.
Exactly.
Okay.
What time does it start at?
No.
Okay, we'll see.
Okay.
I'm gonna be coming from the airport. Okay,
Okay.
let's move on to 9B, which is discussion action on PAB subcommittees and the assignment of members to subcommittees. Okay, so this is intended to circle back on when we had new board members come on. We were planning to include some of them on different subcommittees. And we have a list of the subcommittees thanks to, I believe, Alice Murillo, is that right?
Yeah.
What page is that on the report? So,
It's on page 83 of the packet.
page 83 of the packet. There we go. Well, 84 of the packet, maybe, or, yeah, 84. So right now we have how many appointed board members? We have 7. Is
Mhm.
that right?
Yeah.
7. So we can have a max subcommittee of 3. We need someone for the policy review subcommittee. And there are open spots on metrics and operations, outreach and engagement, and also we need someone, and we also have on encampment clearances. I had talked to a couple of board members about the preferences, the new welcome board member Alan and board member to Temple. I want to ask you without suggesting anything, if you have a thought. I can say that there are certain ones that despite the numbers might not reflect the exact or the numbers and the description might not reflect what is entirely possible, within the subcommittee. Do either of you have a thought?
No, I agreed with your recommendation.
Okay. So my recommendation was for board member Allen to join the outreach and engagement committee, particularly because historically that committee didn't only just do recommendations. I think that there's other, and board member Allen had expressed, interest in a few of the department's outreach activities around like the high school and things like that. And I think that would be beneficial for us to continue to touch base with them on. How do you agree with that suggestion, board member Allen?
Yes,
And then board member Temple, I wasn't sure where we landed.
I'm not sure either. Where would that whole thing about they were wanting to belong?
So that is a liaison role, but I think that the way that we could do
the
it
department.
is it will soon be policy conversation, and if you join policy, it's not right now, it's not a.
What is that?
It's the function that you can join a committee at a time. So if you join, we can have that be our very next. That would be most welcome.
Okay.
Okay.
What's the name?
All of you. Okay, great. Okay, with that, are there any other changes that we might need to make to the subcommittee list?
The policy review one that we just assigned somebody one was the one that was the most critical.
Right.
I think I briefly commented to you, Chair, might be misremembering. And I think it was a request by either yourself or the vice chair. We do have open policy reviews. It had been deprioritized. Or not necessarily, the annual report was taking up most of our time. But we do plan to bring back that list and that reassessment of some of those. So board members might be interested in taking on some of those reviews. And we'll be able to provide that after we present the annual report.
Sounds good. Yeah, we can't vote on those yet because they're not before us and they're not in our packet. But
Yeah.
I think we'll be looking out for those. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, with that, I'll move to appoint board member Allen to the outreach and engagement committee. And if with the is the chair, are you the chair for one of those?
I was never named the chair.
I think officially there's
Okay,
a
I'm gonna do. Okay, there you go.
Okay. No problem.
With your consent, is that?
Yeah, that's fine.
And then, and nominate, board member Temple to the policy review committee and also reestablish that committee so that it's an operating subcommittee.
That's your motion.
What's the motion?
I second.
Okay. Board Member Allen?
Yeah,
Okay, Board Member Bozo Charco,
Yes.
Board Member DeTemple, Vice Chair Wilson, and Chair Cayetano.
Yeah.
All right, the motion carries.
Okay. Let's go to 9C, which is on the Heartland Police Force policy. I have an oral update that might require action, and it is only because I have been underwater that I have only an oral update, but I will be able to read a couple of emails to you all. Or at least like read the substance of part of them, and form our conversation. But this has, just for context, and I think everyone at this point is familiar with where we're at in the process. The department proposed very extensive red lines. We have been meeting, I think I've been meeting with them now, with the director for a couple of months. I was meeting with them before the director joined, so I think we're at maybe meeting 7 or 8. I sent them a list of 50 changes, substantive changes to the policy that I understood they were proposing, and we went through all of those. And so now we're done with that. And so I took back their reasons, and I'm now proposing back my red lines. However, at the we had a meeting with some of the city stakeholders, and during that meeting, the chief mentioned that one of the reasons for the urgency was related to a shooting, an officer involved shooting that happened in Berkeley. And there was a need to revise the policy in light of that shooting. And I talked to the deputy chief after that in one of our use of force subcommittee meetings. And what she informed me of was that following that shooting that had happened, where there was a death, they had a conversation with a different attorney, not our attorney, where that attorney, who I assume to be either Lexipol's attorney or some union attorney or something like that, told them that what had happened was indefensible in light of our policy. Like our policy was made that indefensible, and so there was concern around the way our policy was drafted because it made it difficult to square with what had happened. So I thought that was a very illuminating conversation. And to me, that was subtext that had not been disinterred until meeting number 6, after 6 months of discussing with the department. And so to me, that was significant because I want to understand the real reason for these changes. And as I've explained, the reasons that we were all told didn't really make sense to me. And it was not until that comment that it clicked that this was one of that surely is a very real reason. And so after that, I was like, okay, I came back to the board and I said, hey, are you interested in looking at, for example, the department's internal affairs records where they've sustained use of force complaints that we do not have access to? We said yes to the threshold question of whether we were even just interested in them. I asked the chief, the deputy chief, to provide, instead of like requests, I'm not throwing out requests without being tailored to what we actually need. I asked her for a list of the number of cases where the department sustained use of force complaints that were not also on our docket, and she listed, I believe, 4 of them. Let me just so there is 1 in 2021, 2 in 2023, and 2 in 2025. And so I am coming back to the board to ask if we want, and I consulted with our attorneys on what was proper to ask. So this is in light of that conversation. Just so you're aware. I'm coming back to the board to ask whether the board is interested in reviewing the records related to those 5 findings in order to understand whether any of those, because whether any of those should inform our understanding of the use of force policy. I don't have any information on whether they would inform because I don't know what they are. And we know the ones that we have handled, which are very few, where we found an actual sustaining claim. And so that really, I know I'm not providing much information because I don't have much information on what those 5 are. And if there are additional questions that you want me to ask before making a formal request for those records, or if you don't want me to have them at all, if you just want to, we're going to come back to the next meeting with what we have. And that's fine with me too. I just want to flag this as something that I want to have your input before going out.
So we would get a summary of those. Like findings, what would we get actually?
So we could review, so if there was a finding in an instance where there was a death, we could receive it, include everything. If there was an instance where there was a finding that the officer uses unreasonable or excessive force, we could get everything as well. If it didn't involve those things, we could get not the findings, but the body camera footage and the actual the actual primary sources and not the findings themselves.
And this is there discretion from DPD on this, or if it's requested, it needs to be provided under the terms that just described?
So that would be for this board to decide. The level of ask would be up to this board.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. If the ask is, it would be nice to see, but you're gonna say no, and okay, fine, we'll take that. Give us a reason, then you can give me that direction. I'm not trying to go out on my own without your support, honestly. The thing is, like, I don't know what these 5 cases are. I don't know how egregious they are. I don't know what they would say or how they would inform my understanding of the policy. I'm not trying to go for it. I tried to ask the number of them, and I tried to ask additional information, but I haven't heard back from them. For example, like, are these 5 cases, what level of force was used in these 5 cases? Was it 1, 2, 3, 4? And they couldn't give me that information. So I think like that to me would have helped me pitch it to you, right? Like if it was a level 4 force, that's an actual shooting. Would that inform our reading of the policy, or would it inform my reading? See,
I'm assuming that this material was something that we'll review in closed session.
We would review it. What was that?
I can,
Go ahead.
yeah, so our understanding, well, my understanding is that anything that's related to a sustained use of force, same, improper excessive use of force, we also are lucky to have Lieutenant Perkins here, who's formerly a BIA. But that would be a public record. So the entire report would be partially redacted, but would be a public record. And the PAB would have, like, anyone can submit a public records request and get them up with that. But there are some limitations if it was a different kind of thing, maybe related to like the air, and it could also be under a use of force, but anything that's a sustained use of excessive use of force or improper use of force is a public record at the top of the state law.
That comports with my understanding, but Lieutenant Perkins, you have it, and you want to add, not to put you on the spot.
But to put me on the spot. So it's fine. That enforcement, but I understand as well, you'll get the same.
Thank you. We could request it and still allow certain, redactions for, person identifying information on the one, things like that, but, that would. The scope of our request is what we make of it.
Mhm.
I just want to understand your first comment that there was an officer involved shooting that resulted in a death. And the analysis was that our policy made that indefensible. I don't understand that.
So I have a theory. I don't have anything more from the department besides what you just said. Like there was no explication of that. I have a theory of why that would be the case. Which I intend to ask about more. But yeah.
Do you want to propose a motion?
I would like to hear thoughts before I propose a motion, but if I don't know what people are thinking, I can't propose a motion. I mean, I don't have like a.
You're basically, how far will you support you in pushing this, like ultimately filing another subpoena in Superior Court and like this?
No, that's not where I'm going with this.
So what is it that you want from us?
I want to know if you want these if you want these 5 things, or if we can make decisions about it.
I mean, I would say kind of like why not? So I'd be inclined to just ask for it. But I guess where I might differ is I would just start with it sounds like you tried to get some of this from you tried to get some of it but you couldn't get, but you only got like small excerpts or something like that. Is that correct?
No.
Or they didn't say why.
No. The only thing I got was the number, and then I asked all other questions about it, and I didn't get feedback there.
So sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, what's the secret?
And I'll be clear, the reason why I think it'd be worthwhile is I think we want to know how this department handles its issues internally. That's a vital question regarding the health of the department to know it. And this gives us information and insight into that. If and that's in terms of deepening our understanding of how the department is functioning, and we want it to function very well. I think it's a great idea to know how it is viewing use of force, and what constitutes excessive force.
Quick question for the town clerk and support and do you know if there's been already a PRA request for things of this nature? Maybe not big things, but things of this nature in your experience, like in the past.
I can't speak to that specifically
Okay.
today. I mean, I'll say, like, it's a question you find out, you have to, but.
That's okay. Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay. So with that, I'm going to move to approve me to make a formal request of the department to produce all publicly disposable records related to these 5 instances in order to inform our understanding of the use of the election policy and the department's response.
Okay. Take roll call. Sorry, wrong page. Board Member Allen?
Go in alphabetical order.
Pardon? Yeah.
Yes.
Board Member Buzzell Charcot.
Yep.
Board Member The Temple, Vice Chair Wilson, and Chair Cayetano. Okay, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you all. The last thing I'll note is that I got information about the department who supports the incidents from 2016 to 2020, and they informed me that the collection criteria was different. The reporting criteria was different during that time period. So the numbers are just simply apples and oranges to what we currently are seeing. So what we are left with is 2021 to 2025 data. Any questions on that? Okay, all right. Without further ado, thank you all. Wait, Director, do you have anything on that? Or no? Yeah. With that, let's go to discussion action on the RFP for public safety and technology tools. That's Chair Wilson.
Yes, so. The RFP was released yesterday. Questions from vendors are due to the department July 20th. And proposals are due August 20th. Then there's going to be some internal vetting. When I say internal, that's the voting stakeholders on the selection, as part of the selection process. Internal vetting of the proposals, it's going to take place through the end of August. And selected vendors will be invited to demo their products during the first several weeks of September, with selection intended by September 30th. There's been a tremendous amount of back and forth on this RFP, multiple drafts of it. I'm not sure if we shared with the full board the letter that I wrote to council. I didn't see that. It's in the packet. Oh, it's in the packet. Okay. I should have. So there's a lot to get here, but where we are today, I feel okay about it. It's still a very compressed time frame for this selection. But you know, we will see how it goes. I'm keeping an open mind on the process. I appreciate many of the edits that I requested were ultimately included in the RFP. One that I see was not, is there isn't clarity around how the demos themselves will be weighted in the scoring process. And I raise that as something significant because one of the reasons we were told that the department initially wanted to go with Flock was because of the superiority of the performance of its drones. And so now performance as demonstrated through a demo is not an invaluable category. And I think that's unusual. As far as I can tell, that's my last outstanding issue with the RFP. So that's where we are.
Thank you.
I would just add that I believe that it was due to the vice chair's questioning about the timeline, that they did extend the whole process from basically the timeline to respond. It was initially quite short.
Yeah, extremely short.
Very short. And the chair made a compelling case, comparing similar RFPs from other jurisdictions, so this one is still short by comparison, but it's at least now started out.
Thank you for all your work on it. Are there any action items that you would have us take? Are there any benchmark in the future that we like timeline wise that we need to be aware of?
No, as I said, the proposals aren't due until August 20th, so there's nothing until then, and then we'll see what the process looks like in terms of scheduling demos.
Any questions on the comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll go now to agenda item 10, which is public comments.
Okay, I'll go straight to our virtual attendees. Just one moment. Okay, George Littman, you've been granted permission to speak. 3 minutes are on the screen.
Thank you. For those who I haven't met yet, my name is George Littman. I was former member and chair of the Police Review Commission and involved at that time and since then with the Reimagining Public Safety project or program and the fair and impartial policing, as well as the development of the proposal initially in the campaign for the PAB's establishment. Reflecting on two discussions tonight, one with Chief Lewis on the EIS/EWS, and the other the vice chair and chair's concerns about how we can undermine ourselves by stressing the many possible reasons for racial disparities. I appreciate both of those, and in the reflection, these are in my mind the same issue. I'll explain why. Those of us who were involved in fair and impartial were clear that we didn't have a full picture of the reason for disparities. That doesn't mean that we have nothing to say about it or diminish the importance of it. It has to be on the BPD to identify causes that are within their domain, because obviously we can't. You can't entirely do that. I appreciate Chief Lewis' perspective on the EIS that it not focus entirely on the number of complaints and try to be more proactive. The original intent for reimagining, was that it not focus entirely on the number of was not to focus only on the individual. The evaluation of the F&I process is that there was a 7-to-1 disparity on a demographic basis between black and white civilians who were stopped. It's entirely possible for the department to identify the outlier officers who have conducted a vast majority of the disparate stops. So we're looking at a couple of things. One is internal discipline and internal problems on an individual level. We're also looking at finding a pattern or perhaps other reasons within the department for these disparities. If I could just have a few more seconds. We have to look at all of the issues, the three separate kinds of issues. One, with the individual. Two, within the department. And three, the other sociological issues that are outside of it. And I represent the Peace and Justice Commission, not speaking for it tonight, but we're interested in these same.
Thanks, George.
Sorry?
Thank you, George. Time's up, sorry. Appreciate you.
Any additional speakers on Zoom? Chair, we have no additional hands raised.
Okay. And feel free to write, George. Thank you for commenting. I did present with to the Peace and Justice Commission, and we had good cross collaboration, so maybe welcome that. Okay, with that, let's go to agenda item 11, which is closed session. Thank you all for being here.
Okay, video and audio recording will now stop. Chair, we are back in the record.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. There's no approved staff recommendation on one item, and with that, we'll go to agenda item 13, which is adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.